We are just a little bit more than a week from President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration. The Biden administration already faces a number of foreign policy challenges around the world, especially in the Middle East. The president-elect says he wants to work towards rejoining some sort of nuclear pact with Iran. President Trump withdrew the U.S. from the international Iran nuclear deal in May of 2018 and reimposed harsh sanctions on the Islamic Republic. The new foreign policy under Mr. Biden could also see a shift in Washington's approach with regional partner Saudi Arabia and close ally Israel. For more on this, I want to bring in Ambassador Danny Danon. He is a former Israeli ambassador to the United Nations. Ambassador Danon, thank you for joining us. I want to talk about the close ties that President Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have enjoyed over this period of the Trump presidency. How much do you expect that to change with President-elect Biden taking office in just a few days?
Thank you for having me today. And like you mentioned, we have a strong bond with the U.S. It's not only about the leaders, it's about the peoples. We have the same values, strong democracies, and we prove that we know how to work together. I myself worked at the UN for 5 years with both administrations, Obama's administration and Trump administration, and I'm sure we'll continue to work with Biden's administration in a few weeks. So we are not worried about working together, but the main issue, the main question is, what will happen with the JCPOA, the deal with Iran, whether President-elect Biden will re-enter the agreement, or he will actually call his allies in the region, mainly Israel, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf countries, and ask them to speak about it before he actually starts to negotiate with the Iranians.
Well, in the last several months, Israel has announced it's normalizing relations with some of its neighbors in the Middle East. The Trump administration has taken credit for those agreements. Do you think that this process could be slower with the upcoming change in American leadership?
First, we do have to give credit to the administration. They worked hard to facilitate the agreements with the UAE, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco. And I think we will see more countries joining the Club of Peace in the near future. I'm sure it will continue. I'm sure that President-elect Biden will continue with the momentum because it's good for Israel, it's good for the region, it's good for the U.S. to bring stability to the region. So I'm optimistic about that. And I think, I don't know who will be his special envoy, who will be the guy he will send to the region, but I'm sure that President-elect Biden, who knows the area very well, will continue with the momentum because it brings more respect to the U.S.
Well, let's switch gears now to Iran. Last week, that country announced it is increasing uranium enrichment to 20%. That move violates the 2015 nuclear deal. President-elect Joe Biden has said that he intends to re-enter the Iran nuclear deal, which President Trump removed the United States from. What could these developments mean for the relationship between the U.S. and Israel?
Well, I think we should listen very carefully to the president-elect after the elections. And I was happy to hear a different language, that he will not re-enter the agreement immediately, that he will consult with other players in the region. I think it's important because re-entering the agreement will be a mistake. The Iranians are lying from the beginning. They are enriching uranium. They are conducting ballistic missile tests. And most importantly, they are funding terrorism day and night. Look, Lana, in 2020, they spent $20 billion on terrorism. So you cannot actually re-enter an agreement with an entity that promotes terrorism globally. So I believe that President-elect Biden will take his time, will speak with his allies, and only then will start negotiating with the Iranians.
Well, President-elect Biden is also a prominent critic of Israeli settlement buildings. He supports an independent state for the Palestinians. What are your thoughts on that, particularly since it stands in such stark contrast to President Trump? And do you see talks between Israel and the Palestinians happening with help of the United States in this next term?
So President-elect Biden is very experienced, as I mentioned. He knows the issues, and we want to negotiate with the Palestinians. And I think now when we have 6 Arab countries recognizing Israel, it will be easier to negotiate with the Palestinians because we will invite those countries to join us in the negotiating room. And I'm sure President Biden will use the momentum of the normalization agreements. So it will not be only us and the Palestinians. It will be more of a regional agreement maybe a regional conference. I think that is a way to move forward for more stability in the Middle East.
Well, what about that settlement question? I want to make sure that you address that as well, because that is, as you know, such a hot button issue to every side who's involved in it. And it was something that President Trump sided with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on. And there were a lot of efforts made to try and make those settlements in the West Bank, particularly permanent settlements, have them recognized as part of Israel in a way that the Palestinian Authority said violated international law and all previous agreements.
So Prime Minister Netanyahu decided after signing the agreement with the UAE not to move forward with applying sovereignty over the Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria. And I think it has been proved already that the communities, or you call them the settlements, are not the problem. For example, look at Gaza. We pulled out of Gaza in 2005. We don't have any Jewish settlements in Gaza today, but we have terrorism. We have Hamas who took over. I think the main issue is to have a dialogue with the Palestinians, and we proved we can sign peace treaties. We did it with Egypt. We paid a heavy price for that peace treaty. Same with Jordan, and now with 4 more Arab countries. So it's not about us. It's about the Palestinians willing to re-enter the negotiations.
Israel is heading to its 4th election in 2 years. Your elections have made our elections look at times timid. Do you believe that the election in March will be different from what we've seen previously? And tell our viewers who might not be as familiar what's really at stake, not just for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, but also for the country this time around.
First, I hope it will be the last elections for this year. You know, we had 4 elections in 2 years. It's insane, but that's democracy. It's a choppy system. It's the best one we have, and we need more stability. But this cycle will be very interesting because in the past it used to be left versus right. It will not be the case. Today it will be more about the prime minister. You're gonna have a lot of parties actually from the right running to the parliament, and they are saying we will not endorse the prime minister. So the right-wing parties will get more support in the upcoming elections on March 23rd, but half of them will not join forces with Prime Minister Netanyahu. So it will be interesting to see who will be the one who will be able to form a government after the 4th elections.
Ambassador Danny Danon, thank you.
Thank you very much.